The videotaping today is sponsored by the Historic Preservation Fund of the U.S. Department of the Interior through the Nebraska State Historical Society and the City of Lincoln, a certified local government. Our speaker today is Roxanne Smith. Roxanne has a degree in Community and Regional Planning from Iowa State University. She oversees the Office of the Capitol Commission's Capital Education and Promotion Program, and she's worked at the Capitol for nearly 40 years. Roxanne has come to love and appreciate the Capitol for the fine architectural monument and the teaching tool that it is. Roxanne's talk today is titled Capitol HVAC and Governor Suite Project, Restoration in Preservation Spaces. Please join me in welcoming Roxanne.
Thank you all very much. I have quite a few slides, so I'm not sure how fast they'll go. Don't blink, and hopefully I can get through all of them in time. The program I'm going to do talking about HVAC project, and especially the restoration in the Governor's Suite, involves a lot of people. They're on our Capitol Commission staff. Brett Doherty is our acting administrator. Matt Hansen is preservation architect. It involves the carpenters, the maintenance crew, the custodians. Within the carpenter shop, there's Lana Gable, Don Snyder, Mike Marshall, Hunter Von Holt, John McKeekin, and Dan Kracky. And in the maintenance staff that works on the project, Michael Jordan, Chris Lehman, Jeff Gillette, and Tahir Karimi. And the custodial staff that worked on the project were David Hoschler, Dennis Roy, and Richard Malum. Throughout the slides, you will see them in action. First, I'm going to do a brief update, a brief remember, so that you will know what we've done so far. Recall, we were going to put a ground source geothermal recirculating refrigerant system in the building to take place of the old 1960s steam and chilled water system. The state had a parking lot that we could use as a well field, and this shows the well field and the route to the Capitol. On the right, you can see the Capitol. You can see the pipes leading to the well field from the building, and then you can see the wells. Within the well field, there are 225 wells, 675 feet deep. And when we are pulling heat out of the building in summer for the air conditioning, we will raise the temperature of the ground beneath that well field 4 degrees. You will recall the excavation that took place on that site, the well drilling that took place on that site. That took about, and I'm going to look out there at Matt. I'm going to say that took about a year and a half to put the well field in. So as part of the project, they pulled in the giant tubes that held the pipes that would put the recirculating refrigerant. Here you can see where the pipes came into the Capitol. In the basement, they had to drill through the outside walls, but because our Capitol is built very strong and very structural, there was no need for reinforcement. They were able to put the pipes in through the side of the building, did a little bit of work on the lawn, and did some restoration then of the Capitol grounds. Next, there you can see the pumps that were installed to distribute the water, the refrigerant that was coming into the building, throughout the building in all the different areas. Here you can see the new system and the old system side by side as they're beginning to slowly replace the old air handling system, and then they have the new system. You can see the new pipes going up, being insulated across the top. Here you can see again the old system with the old air handlers, the old vents and things. This is on the 3rd floor, and then on the right-hand side, there is the new system installed in the same space. As we look at that, on the left, your left, as we look at the left in that, you can see the galvanized vents are from the 1960 system. The painted vents and the painted areas of the system are from the original system. So each time when we upgraded from the original system to the 1960 system, they used some of the original vents and things, but when we went into the new system, we were not able to use all of the old vents, and so we replaced a lot of those. In some areas, we were able to leave the original system in and work around it just so we could have an example of what was there originally. Next, please. Here you can see the 1960s system. To put air conditioning in the building in some parts, they went into the ceiling spaces of the building and they added the vents. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see the clear story windows, and you can see the one vent that comes out and down and follows along. When they put in the drop-in ceilings, they had to cover all those vents. So those of you who recall being in the building, when we had the drop-in ceilings, they were flat and then they angled up so that the clear story windows would still be open. Next. You can see after they have removed all the vents out of the outside corridors, then they installed some new equipment up above the true ceiling, and then they had to put in the metal lath so that they could do replastering. You can see on the left that the level of the ceiling now is even with the top of the clear story windows, and on the right you can see that they have some of the new equipment that they've had to cut out entire sections of the ceiling so they could install some of the new equipment and put it in. Next, please. There you can see the plasters, the contractors coming in, putting in the metal lath and then beginning to work on the plaster to cover all that up. On the right, you can, the paint, they've got the ceiling work done, they've got the plaster repair done, they're doing plaster repair on the walls. You can see from the 1989 project, I'm looking out there, 1989 project that we had tried to paint the walls back to original color, and you can see how the drop-in ceiling, we didn't get to paint that beautiful buff gray. And you can see where the wall, the old ceiling went up and exposed the clear story windows. Next, please. There you can see before and after. On the left-hand side, you can see what it looked like before the project. You can notice that the light fixtures that hang in the corridors had been shortened, so they would hang at the same level as previously. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the restored ceiling height. You can see restored lamps. On the far right, there is one of the lamps that was being restored. Preservation architect Matt Hansen worked with a contractor. We had a blueprint in the archive that showed what the original profile of the chain was. We had one sample that was left over from when they took them apart and then reworked them so they could make them much shorter. And from the blueprint and the one sample, we were able to have all new chains made by a foundry and then shipped to us. And then, did you do it yourself, Matt? And then Matt Hansen reworked all of those fixtures for the entire corridor. So as you walk through the building, know that Matt put his hands on every one of those lights to put it back to original, and you can see how much nicer it looks indeed, and how the light and shadow of the clear story windows is much, much nicer now that they're completely open. Next, please. As part of the project, in all the phases, we have been able, because the spaces have been empty for 18 months as a rule, we've been able to go in, and the carpentry staff has cleaned the chandeliers and cleaned the lamps. On the left-hand side, you can see Dawn showing a dirty pane and a clean pane, And if anybody can remember going in the legislative chamber, seeing those chandeliers hang, you can really tell the difference between the clean glass now. You can see Lana on the right, who is scrubbing the dirt and soil and nicotine and all the gooey stuff off of the little panes that will go back into the chandelier. Next, please. Here is Dawn, brave Dawn, up on the genie lift, cleaning and vacuuming the chandelier that hangs in the reading room of the law library. We were able to get in there and do that work while it was empty, and it's only because the HVAC project has emptied those areas of staff and regular public use that we've been able to go in and do extensive cleaning. Next, please. Here you can, oh, there's Dawn again up on her scaffold, cleaning. This is the chandelier that hangs above the governor's desk. And I'm not going to speculate when the last time we were able to get into the governor's office and do work. I know they did some work on the cleaning the murals during the Orr administration. Possibly, probably, they would have cleaned the chandelier at that time, but it was very dirty. It's hard to believe that that much dust can get onto the chandelier at that time. But Dawn's up on the scaffold, clean. Next, please. There's the before and after of her cleaning. That's a lot of dust on that on the other side. So hopefully with the new HVAC system, the new filtration, and we won't have the steam rising, and hopefully the chandeliers and all the fixtures in the building won't get quite that dirty again. But there you can. And no smoking allowed in the building anymore either, which probably made some of that dust to cling. And then you can see the cleaned chandelier and how much nicer it looks. And in all the chandeliers that we worked on, that Dawn worked on, they've needed cleaning desperately, and it just is a huge improvement. When possible, the Tahir Karimi would help out by rewiring chandeliers that we were able to remove and do some more thorough cleaning on. But in these instances, it's just vacuum and dust. Next, please. The part of the HVAC project was to repair the windows and make them airtight and to stop water from leaking in. In this set of photos, you can see in the upper left, there is the window as it appeared before the project began. If you look into that window on the top, inside, you can see the angle wall of the drop-in ceiling still in place. And you can see how rusty the bars on the outside have gotten. And then on the inside, you can see the damage to that, the rust and the caulking that's been removed and the general disrepair of the windows. On the bottom, they have pulled out the interior window for repair, and then they have stripped the paint off of the iron bars, and they're getting ready to repaint. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the restored window, clean and nice, as well as the repainted bars. Next. Here we have more windows. These are windows in the Great Hall, and all these windows were removed and then cleaned and repainted. They put new glass in all the windows, put weather stripping around the windows, and then you can see they're in the process of returning the windows to the Hall of Fame gallery in the northeast quadrant. So there was a huge amount of work that was done and involved a lot of coordinating with our preservation staff and the contractors who were actually doing the work. Next, please. More windows, big part of the project. Here you can see after in the Lieutenant Governor's office, after they have removed the HVAC equipment that was underneath the window, and you can see how rusty and just in terrible disrepair the window is. In many places, that's what the windows on the interior looked like, with no real maintenance and no real repairs for 100 years, 90, 40 years. Oh my goodness, it's hard to believe that would happen in 40 years. And then you can see the work that we would have to do on the plaster walls beneath also. So window repair was a very big important part. Next, please. There you can see brand new window. Well, the old window totally repaired and totally repainted with all of the mechanical parts working very, very well. Back in place with the new HVAC unit beneath it. Next, please. While the contractors were installing the windows, our capital staff was in fine-tuning and making sure that all the mechanical parts worked very well, that they opened and closed properly within their frame. And it's really nice, I think, that they put the mechanical parts of the windows to the original bronze. It's very, very attractive. Next, please. Skylights were involved on the 3rd floor. There were many different skylights. Our staff got involved in removing the skylights and then repairing and putting new panes of glass or replacing the putty that would hold the glass panes in place. So there you can see staff working very hard in the carpenter shop. Next, please. Then we get to the offices themselves. The contractors came in. They removed the HVAC units. They removed drop-in ceilings. They removed ductwork that was in. And then on the right-hand side, you can see after all the equipment was removed and out, then the plaster repair people came in and they repaired the plaster. They were repainting and putting all the offices back together. So it was a total renovation, not only of HVAC, but also of the walls, removing some remaining lead paint that was possibly still underneath the paint that had been put on for many, many years. So there was a lot of work to be done to get the offices into pristine condition. Next, please. In some instances, they had to get into the attic space with new equipment, and so they built temporary stairs and cut holes in the attic so that they could, in the ceiling of the 2nd floor, so they could get up and down in all the attic space. And then on the right-hand side, you can see how the contractors had to work in that attic space. And in the far back, you can see one of the contractors bent over. So while some of us could walk through that attic space without ducking, or just occasionally having to duck for one of the concrete beams that helped to support the roof, it would have been really tight work for the contractors. And there's a lot to be admired for those contractors, because they crawled into some little tiny attic spaces to remove the old vents and to put the new equipment in. Next, please. And there we have before and after. We have the old induction units from the 60s that were out into the room, took up a lot of space, and there's the new recirculating refrigerant, the new units that work very, very well. Anybody who's been in the building for many years, especially office staff, is just overjoyed with the new system. It's the one comment that you hear in the hallways. It's comfortable. It's comfortable. So those of us in the tower are anxiously awaiting our turn for comfort. Next, please. Phase 4, Northeast Quadrant, the Governor's Suite. The Governor's Suite is preservation space, and getting into the preservation space and trying to do restoration work is very difficult because the governor's always in there, staff is always in there using it, unlike the court system where they work 1 week a month, and then for 3 weeks, we're able to get in and work in between their schedule. With the legislature, they're sometimes gone for half a year. We can get in there, as we did with the, the restoration work that we did in the mid-2000s. We were able to get in there, scaffold, clean. The governor's suite was another story. We hadn't been able to get in there at all for a very long time. So we worked, the governor's suite consists of 4 areas: the reception room, the hearing room, the chief of staff's office, formerly the secretary's office, and then the governor's private office. And we'll take a look at some of the work that we did in there now. In the governor's hearing room, in most of the areas where we worked on HVAC project, the contractors were able to go into the adaptive use space, the offices, and just walk right in and start ripping out induction units. But that's very difficult in the governor's suite, because with the highly finished rooms and the cabinets that hold the HVAC units are behind limestone walls. They're behind elegant wood finishes and wood cabinets. So our staff was required to go in and remove the covers, the cabinets, so that allowed the contractors to get in and put in the new equipment. And on the left, you can see the guys chunking away, trying to figure out how they're going to take that beautiful limestone window seat or that limestone cabinet out. And then on the right, you can see how they've finally been able to remove one of the limestone sections that was holding up the vents, and setting them down. They numbered, they organized so that they know exactly where the limestone went back in. Next, please. Then you can see where the limestone had been sitting on the base. Dan had to go in and chunk out the mortar and get it ready for a new installation. You can see the old unit hiding behind there, which the contractors then had to take out. But we allowed them the space to work without damaging any of the building. Next, please. Then on the left-hand side, there's the new units sitting in place. They're slowly but surely trying to put the pieces of limestone back into the area. You can see the vents that covered the units. They're in the process of reinstalling those vents. They've put the vertical members back in, got those all leveled and vertical, and get the vents back in. Next, please. And then you can see them using the mortar so that they could put the final piece back in place, double checking, make sure that it's level, that the vent doors will open and close properly. And I want you to notice in that image, you can see behind where Mike's hand is, there's that big slot. It was originally, I'm not sure if it was original from 1932 when the building was completed, but I know that previous, with the old system, it was just a black vent, with aluminum vent that just had some angled louvers in it that forced the air to come out. And one of the things that we have done, our staff has tried to do, is to improve the system and to make improvements and try and make additions that are more in keeping with the historical character of the rooms. So we're not just adding things, we're trying to improve. So next, please. So taking a cue from the other offices in the suite, we had new vents cast to look like some of the wooden vents that were in the other areas of the suite. And you can see on the left, they are routering out a space so that they could, in that same vent that was in the previous slide, so that they could set the new vent flush with the surface, which is
Who is that?
that is Mike Marshall. Mike Marshall is doing that work right there. And, oh, it looks good. in bronze. Very good. Next, please. And then here is Dan Kratky, our mason, who has taken the opportunity while we're in the governor's hearing room to clean the walls. That's one of the things that they didn't do when the building was completed in 1932. They didn't bother to go ahead and do a final fine-tuning and cleaning. And then, of course, through all the years, with the dust, the open windows, the heat as it moved through the building, carrying dirt and soiling with it. So Dan is working in the governor's hearing room to clean the limestone around the windows. Next, please. I think Dan originally talked about just doing the limestone around the windows, but when we discovered that it got very clean and it looked very, very nice, we decided to go ahead and to continue work. And it's a team effort. I got to be involved. Dan worked on the high parts. I worked on the low parts down close, cleaning, pulling the latex off, and then doing the final cleaning and final scrubbing. In the image on the right, you can see that we have moved around the front of the hearing room, and we're starting up the south wall, and you can tell where it's been cleaned and where it hasn't been cleaned. And it's just amazing to see the difference. Next, please. There you can see where the cabinets are. Dan didn't clean the very bottom because he was waiting for the floorwork to get done and waiting for everything to be put back together. And you can see again what a difference the latex cleaning of the limestone makes. On the right, Dan is getting ready to do his final cleaning. He's working on the fireplace, and he's getting ready to do the door casing that leads into the reception room. The latex poultice is, Dan says it's the consistency of mousse, perhaps. I think it's kind of like, a little bit kind of like peanut butter, perhaps, but yogurt. It's like yogurt, whipped yogurt, that's it exactly. You clean it and you paint it on with paintbrush, let it dry for a little while, paint on another layer, let it dry for 48 hours, and then you saw from the previous pictures, you just go in, grab a hold of it, and start pulling it down, and it just removes most of the soiling indeed. Then you have to go back with a scrub brush in some instances, or a cotton cloth in some instances. The latex poultice leaves detergent on the surface, so that helps also, because any soiling that's left, if you take your scrub brush or your rag, you can scrub a little bit better and get a little bit more soiling off, and then do a final rinse. And it's just amazing how clean it is. One of the things that's good about the latex poultice is we're able to get into the details of the carvings, and there you can see the fasces design has been covered with the latex. And next, please. And you can see before and after what a really good job they did with cleaning. You can see the firebox, how nice and clean the inside of the firebox is. Dan went ahead and decided to clean that also. And then you can see just how nice it looks to have the whole... Yes, on the postcard. And it's really nice that we were able to, again, because even though we had hoped we would have 18 months in the governor's suite, but as it turned out, with the special session and the governor needing to get back in there, our time was cut short. But in the short amount of time that we had to work, we got a lot accomplished. It was like 7 to 4, every day. The guys, all the crew, everybody was in there working hard so that we could get as much done as we possibly could. Next, please. Here, the lamps were removed from the hearing room, and on the left-hand side, the uncleaned wall with the soiling that was around the back of the lamp where it was attached to the wall, And then on the right-hand side, you can see how Dan cleaned the limestone, and then also he did a little experiment to see if he could remove the soiling off the Guastavino tile. And we removed the soiling. One of the dilemmas with trying to clean the Guastavino with the latex is the Guastavino is very soft, and sometimes we pull off some of the surface of the Guastavino, so he just wanted to clean that outside, and I think he was very successful. Next, please. Here you can see the lamp that belonged in that space that Dan cleaned against the wall where the trouble lights were. On the left-hand side, you can see a little bit of the green patina of how that lamp looked, or that bracket lamp looked originally, but then at some point, they painted the fixture black. One wonders why, but maybe the patina was getting splotchy, who knows? But I think that on the right-hand side, and that's a really bad picture because I took it in the shop while they were still working on it, but you can see they have pulled off all Ann Alamami, who is our light conservator. She's been helping out quite a bit. She has removed all of the black paint down to the original surface, and then she has waxed and reinvigorated the patination process on the lamp, and you can see how it's getting its green patina back. There was usually there's a chemical application for a patina, but in this instance, when they made the fixture originally, they used arsenic as a patina, and the arsenic doesn't disappear. It will still continue, now that we've removed the black paint, it will still continue to react, and the fixtures will get darker green and richer green as time goes on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, these fixtures actually didn't have black paint on it, as much as that looks like. That's just filth.
That's just...
And we do have fixtures that got overpainted, but these weren't, so... Yeah, so that's just lots of dirt, and you're right though, as with a clean surface, the fixture repatinates itself.
Oh my goodness, I have been corrected by Matt Hansen, our preservation architect. Silly me, that is not black paint, that is just black crust, icky, gooey, dirty, probably nicotine, attracts dust, and oh my heavens, I would have sworn it was black paint. That just goes to show you how dirty the inside of some of these rooms were, and how lucky we were to with the HVAC project to have the time to go ahead in there and do some cleaning. And yes, they will continue, the arsenic will continue, but I don't think the arsenic is going to hurt anybody, but it will continue to interact with the atmosphere, and they'll continue with their patination. I think these fixtures weigh 60 pounds each. How much? Yep, each of these fixtures weighs 60 pounds each. Next, please. So there you can see. It took 3 of the guys, Tahir Karimi, Chris Lehman, and Michael Jordan, to go ahead and hold the fixture steady so that they could put it into the bolts that were embedded in the walls, and then so they could bolt it back up into place. Behind the fixture on the right-hand side, if you look very carefully behind the actual bronze fixture, you can see a little thin layer of tan metal, and at the very top, you can see a little rod sticking out. When we added new TV lights to the governor's hearing room, one of our, Roger Frank, I believe it was, had created a method that we could make a anchor that would fit perfectly behind the fixture with a little rod that came off the top, so that we wouldn't have to do any kind of invasive attachment of the new lights into the room. Next, please. There you can see we're almost done. Got the fixtures back up. The TV camera lights are back up. We have a new rug in place. It took all of the staff, I think maybe it was 10 of the staff to unroll the rug, put it down, get it in place. And now that everybody's done, the rug is in place. Brett Doherty, our acting capital administrator, is putting the finishing touches on it to vacuum. Next, please. And then you can see the comparison between the hearing room before and the hearing room after we are done. I don't know, in these images it doesn't look like the room's that much different, does it? But we have heard from staff who go into that room over and over again say, it's so much brighter, it's so much nicer. So that's our goal with the preservation program, is we don't want the changes that we make or the improvements we make to be noticeable, but it just changes the feel of the room, and staff is just delighted with how, the governor's staff is just delighted with how it turned out. Next, please. Private offices in the governor's area. Next, please. As we have been through the years able to go in and do restoration and renovation in the adaptive use space, again, because the governor's office and the governor's staff was always working every day, we were unable to go in and do any wholesale changes and remove some of the changes that were made in the 1950s. On the left-hand side, you can see we were able to go in, pull off. On the far left side of that left-hand picture, you can see a piece of paneling. You can see the walls where the paneling had been installed. We're able to rip all that off, remove the vents that they had put in to the ceilings. It's hard to tell on that image, but some of them even had small acoustical tiles that were glued to the walls above the paneling, and they had stayed pretty much in the condition they were in since the 1950s. And again, HVAC allows us to go in and rip everything out, put in the new system, but also repair. On the right-hand side, you can see that exact same corner of that office, looking exactly like it would have, well, except for that fluorescent light, of course, but looking just like it would have when the building was completed in 1932. A huge improvement for staff and an opportunity for us to do restoration and put it back together. I want you to notice where the wardrobe is located. Just above the right-hand side of the wardrobe, you can see that little white box. Can everybody see that? File that away for future reference. Next, please. Behind the governor's office, there's a preservation space that is an office for the staff of the governor. And here you can see how our staff has gone in. They've again removed the cabinets that were covering the 1960s HVAC system. In order to remove those cabinets, they basically had to disassemble part of the paneled wall, the window seats that were in there, and you can see the window seats and the cabinet covers are there leaning against the wall. And you can see that beautiful blue carpet. Next, please. Here you can see in the process, or at some point, the cover of the cabinet had gotten broken, and so you can see our staff had to take it down to the shop to refinish and re-glue and improve it and put it back together. Next, please. Please. Once they had there's the new equipment. Once they had gotten the new equipment in, then Mike Marshall again was able to go in, put the window seat back in, put the paneling back against that corner wall, and then start to do some repair work, filling the holes from the nails. Next, please. And then with those things back in place, you can see in this shot some of the paneling and in what poor conditioning the paneling was in. We did not have ultraviolet film on these windows, so the paneling was terribly faded, and splotchy from having all those ultraviolets on for that long time. So while we had the time, we took advantage of the opportunity to, next please, to go ahead and sand off the old finish, strip the old finish. Staff working together to get the job done. Next please. Then you can see staff comes back in. They put a new stain on the walnut paneling. You can see Dawn puts the stain on the left, and then Mike Marshall comes behind and removes the excess stain. Next, please. The doors for the cupboards in that private back office, you can see in the refinishing shop, the doors have been removed, refinished, and then the stain and a final coat of finish put back on so that they could be eventually taken back upstairs and put in place. Next, please. Here you can see before and after on the left-hand side. At some point during the use of the building, you can see on the left that they would have painted the lavatory different color, but in that right cupboard you can see the wire molding that they put in at some point, and the added equipment, a light switch, a plug-in that they put in that didn't belong. So you can see on the right hand side, staff has gone ahead and cleaned up those rooms, scrubbed the floors, got them looking much better, and removed all the wire molding and all the added electrical that didn't need to be in that area. Next, please. Then once we got all of the work done that we had to do on staining and refinishing the paneling, staff taped off all of the equipment, and then the plasters came in to remove the acoustical tile panels that were on the walls, to do the plaster repair, to strip and do plaster repair, to repair any holes that they had made in the ceiling. And then on the right, you can see how they started to paint back to original colors, which is this delightful yellow. What's this, buckskin? That's called buckskin. Next, please. You can see that the repairs that Dawn made on that cabinet. There's that little piece is glued back on. The cabinet is put back in place to cover the new HVAC equipment. Carpet's been laid. We're getting close to the end. Next, please. Next. Here you can see it's almost done. Everything's ready to go. They just need to put carpet in. You can see the picture molding around the ceiling on the top has been put back in place. I want you to notice that little box up above that shelf on the left-hand side. You can see that black box in this case. And on the right-hand side, you can see, do you know where those lamps came from, Matt?
They came from other rooms in the building. They're Capital Original, but they just had been taken out of the space, so we put them back into the space.
Capital Original light fixtures, at some point they may have taken them out, put the fluorescents in, but we've take them and any Capital Original fixtures that we still have available, we will try to put those back into preservation spaces rather than have them in adaptive use spaces. Although some of them have been put back into adaptive use spaces, if you notice as you look at the building, in the corner offices on the southwest and the northwest corner offices, second floor, we have rehung original fixtures in there so that when you look at the building from the outside, on those corners you will see the original fixtures as opposed to the fluorescents. Next, please. And there you can see the doors back in place. The hardware in this room, like in another secret room in the Capitol, the cupboard doors, the closet doors open with a push. There's a little knob. You can see the little mechanism, and there's a little push button in the center, and you push the button and the door opens. So these are very, very well made and very lovely. Recall I pointed out that little box. Here you can see that little box is right up there on the right. You can barely see it because, again, when we add in the previous spot where we saw it, that was adaptive use space, an office. And so we don't go to great extent to try and cover up the little firebox. But in this preservation space, staff has worked to make sure that the box gets painted out for the wall color so that the added technology doesn't interfere with the general architectural integrity of the room. Next, please. The success of the work that we did in the back private office enabled us then to move into the Chief of Staff's office and work very hard to get it cleaned up and to get floors repaired and walls repaired. Next, please. There, you can see on the left-hand image up in the very top left corner, you can see a little bit of white plaster damage. When they put the 1960s HVAC system in, they put mechanical equipment in the attic space above these preservation spaces. And with 50 years, 60 years of use, some of the mechanical equipment, the pumps and things began to fail, and that caused leaking, and the leaking went through onto the plaster, the beautiful molded plaster ceiling. So one of the projects that we had known we needed to accomplish from the very beginning was to repair the plaster in the Chief of Staff's ceiling. And you can see while Dawn and Hunter are working on restaining the walls, the paneled, walnut paneled walls, after they had stripped the old finish off, while they're working on that, then our team, the plaster contractor, was up repairing the plaster, and then when the plaster contractor was finished with the plaster repair, then our team went in and put on paint and coloring so that we could match the finish where the plaster, around the plaster repair. So it's wet in the bottom right picture, so it looks a little different color. But when you go in now, and if you were to glance up there, it matches very, very well, and you can't tell that there was any damage or that the repair was done. Next, please. After that work was done, we got to work on the floor in the Chief of Staff's office. The floor was in need of refinishing, and so the first thing they did was get down and begin to sand on the floor. As they sanded the floor, they discovered many areas of damage where the areas in between the planks had gotten broken, but they also were able to find, in the right-hand picture, a repair from years ago by Hunter's left foot. So we took that as our cue after they got it all sanded. Next, please. They took the clue from the original repair from who knows when, 40s, 50s, at some point, before our time, that's for sure. So, and then you can see how the damaged areas, so they took the clue from the repairs, they went in and they routed the edge of all of those damages so they could get a very smooth surface so that they could go ahead and reapply. They didn't go down very deep into the wood at all, just enough that they could re-glue and get a new piece molding of the oak in there so that they could repair those areas so that they would be stable and sturdy and they couldn't be damaged anymore. You can see some of the routering work being done, some of the new pieces, the mended areas being put back in. And then you can see in the center, that was one of the original repairs. So that was very fortunate that we were able to use the clues from the past and find a way to do our repairs now. Next, please. And there you can see Hunter working hard, putting the pieces in place and getting the floor ready for refinishing. Next. Oh, then after they got everything done, all the repairs made, Hunter and Mike Marshall went in and refinished the floor, put a new stain down, and then Mike Marshall went ahead and put a new, more durable finish down on it. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the floor after it's been repaired and had the stain and the new finish on, and you can't really see where those repairs were made. They did an excellent job. And then, of course, eventually there'll be a rug that goes down over that, but still it stabilizes the floor and makes it stronger so that as people walk and use the room, it doesn't further damage the floor. Next, please. Oops, oh, look at that. Last things to be done. We have the doors to be reinstalled. The trim, the molding trim was reinstalled. Once the furniture was all reinstalled, then Lana and Dawn went in and cleaned and fine-tuned all the furniture. There are a couple of pieces of the original furniture in the Chief of Staff's office that the ladies are working on right now down in the furniture shop, and I'm sure that their restoration work will be an article in our newsletter coming in the future, and some of the other repair work that they're doing, so we can show you more detailed photos and talk a little bit more about their process. Next, please. Replicated rug. Yes, indeed, a copy of the original rug. Next, please. Reception room. And, oh, what are they doing? Who knows? Our staff is removing the cabinets, has removed the cabinets that covered the original HVAC equipment, and then there's just a close-up that shows you what was behind the beautiful surface finishes in the room and the old system in need of repair and replacement. Next, please. Here you can see the window splays and how, even though they were covered by drapery, you can see how dirty they all are, and the holes that were put in there, and things have happened. On the left-hand side, I'm unsure what that, where you see, or maybe it's the center image, but can you see that, like that dirt shadow that's kind of like a little rectangular piece that goes down? What could that have been? That was added at some point. It's just impossible to know what all those holes are from. But of course, Dan says, we'll clean it up and make it look good. Next, please. Dan says, we'll get it done. And on the right-hand side, you can see after the same windows, but after we do the latex, the poultice, and get it all nice and clean, it just looks much, much better indeed. Next, please. One of the things we were able, in the upper right, you can see how soiled the grout was in the clay tile floor in the governor's reception room. And so staff went in and with the buffer, stripped off the old finished, pulled off a lot of that soiling. You can see on the bottom right how much cleaner that grout has gotten after the work of Richard Malum, one of the custodial staff. So that was a project we were able to do. You can see how they protected, how staff protected the walls while they were doing that work by putting up some of that insulation so they wouldn't accidentally bump against the wall. Next, please. There you can see the cleaned floor, and then you can see where they have started to reapply some of the finish back down onto the floor, which looks really, really nice. Next, please. We were unable, we didn't have the time. It would have been much too complicated and taken quite a bit of time. You can see the marquetry work around the edges for staff to go in and try and strip off old finish and put new finish on the paneling that's in the reception room. You can see the shadow there against the wall of where the banquettes sat, and you can see where a table sat, and how the ultraviolets just totally faded the paneling behind. But we just didn't have an opportunity to do a total refinish of the walls in the reception room. So we put on a conditioner with a wax on it. And Lana went in, and it shined up the paneling. It gave it a little bit richer, deeper finish. I want you to notice in the left-hand picture, up on top of the cove, can you see that black wire? That's new wiring that we did for new cove lighting. Originally, that cove across the top would have had lights that would have illuminated the murals above, and they rewired that so we could put in new cove lighting. Next, please. Here you can see Lana has done the left-hand corner, that left-hand side, and you can see how a little bit richer, a little bit darker it looks. And then on the right-hand side, she hasn't had a chance to go in there yet. But the conditioner with the wax in it rejuvenates the surface and is an improvement. Next, please. There you can see staff is moving back in as fast as possible. We put new desks, the desks return. You can see the draperies that they had cleaned and then rehung. They're still in their plastic cases to keep them safe until it's time to unfurl them and put them back into service. Next, please. And here you can see a before and after that shows the lighting. On the left-hand side, you can see maybe a little bit of the lighting remains on the far left, and maybe a little bit remains on the right-hand side, but most of the cove lighting was out. And now you can see the reinstalled cove lighting that goes all the way around, and that's just a total improvement on the room. I would encourage you to come to the Capitol and walk into the governor's reception room and take a look. It's just wonderful what the new cove lighting has done. We're going to fine-tune the cove lighting with a dimmer so that we get it just exactly perfect in terms of how it illuminates those murals. But even now, it's a huge improvement. So next, please. Next, please. Yay! The Capitol Solar newsletter is published quarterly. You can learn more about the preservation and restoration activities of the Office of the Capitol Commission staff in the newsletter. A lot of the things that I pointed out during this program, there's a lot more extensive discussion and more detailed photographs in the newsletter, and you can also watch in future. We'll continue to add to the newsletter to let people know the kind of work that we do. And we're also celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Capitol. It's a 10-year-long celebration, and the August issue of the newsletter is a retrospect where we look at what was happening 100 years ago in August of 1924. So you take a look at the newsletter and you can learn much, much more about what our staff does. I might give a big shout out to our staff, Brett Doherty, who is our acting Capitol administrator, the carpenters, Lana, Don, Mike, Hunter, John, Dan, maintenance staff, Michael Jordan, Chris, Jeff, Taher, and the custodians, David, Dennis, and Richard. Everybody worked very, very hard to get the restoration work done in the governor's suite in a record amount of time. Questions? Yes, Joel?
Ring the decayed edges on that oak floor.
Yes.
Really smart. And I'd never seen that done before. And I even subscribed to Old House Journal for a number of years. So when you were talking about, we discovered a clue on a past repair, is that the clue you discovered, that early repairs had been done using that technique? And had that not occurred to anybody within the preservation staff before? Was it just so unusual an idea, or
I don't think that preservation staff had to actually think about it, because that floor was under a rug and nobody really saw it. And I think all of the wooden floors in the building have been under rugs. So I don't think staff was encountered such a thing before. And then as they were sanding it, they discovered the deterioration of the edges of the wood. And then as they were sanding right beside it, they saw the repair. So probably given the opportunity to figure it out on their own, they probably would have come up with that. But it was a gift right there. They said, well, this is how they did it. And they uncovered it, both the former repair and the need for repair at the same time.
I often wonder how much of the old-time craftsmanship is lost over time and then accidentally picked up again just through investigation. I wonder how much we've lost that we'll never discover again. Because the people that built that building, there really weren't any machines to help them. They just built it by hand, you know. It's remarkable.
Yes. Oh, yes, indeed. But then, in some instances, they didn't do us any favors by, like, gluing paneling to the walls. Other questions? Okay.